Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. This is another XR for Europe LinkedIn Live session recapping a recent prominent industry event that many people attended, but not everybody attended. So if you're one of the ones who did not attend, then this is a great opportunity to hear from several people from XR for Europe's board of directors who were present throughout the event. And the event specifically is Immersive Tech Week. I probably should have led off with that. If you missed the event, then it's a great opportunity to hear insights from a very diverse group of people who were attending and participating all throughout the event. If you were at the event, this is also a great opportunity to contribute to the conversation by sharing in the comments your own responses to the questions that I'm going to pose to our panel today. So to introduce our panel, we have Laetitia, Alexandra, and Thierry. You can see their names here, and of course, if you're watching this, you probably know them all. And if you don't, you'll know certainly much more about them soon, because what stood out to them about the event and what they saw is going to reflect very much what was their motivation to come and what they were hoping to see and learn. So on that note, I would like to go ahead and just jump in, open up, and again, for anyone who's watching live, in the comments on LinkedIn or on YouTube, you can ask your questions or share your own responses to the questions. And the first question, of course, is to everybody here: what is the thing you first remember when we bring up the topic of Immersive Tech Week 2026? What stands out most prominently in your memory from the event? Any first takers?
Well, shall we say the heat wave, even in Rotterdam, because that has had a huge impact, of course, on the event. I would say it was not quite as predictable as it was hot, because it was just alike in Paris and Geneva and all around Europe. So yes, and it was also my first time in Rotterdam during the summer, because normally it's always during IFFR, or it was before at the Doelen in November or late in the year. So yes, that was my the first thing.
Okay. Yeah, heat. Yeah. Alexandra, Thierry, what stood out to you most when you recall the event, which is now a couple weeks ago?
Yep. Good lineup of speakers. Some of them came up several times on several topics, so it's also good to have different perspectives from a same speaker. And I would say great to have informal discussions with the Virtual World Association. I like the small lounges, so that you could actually take time to sit down and have those conversations in a chilled way. The event being smaller than it usually was, you actually had more time to spend with each of the people that were there.
Yeah. And Thierry?
So being the last one to speak, I can say the heat and the lounge and sessions. And it was an event, I would say, on a human perspective, not the huge event you have to run everywhere, and going from the keynote rooms to the lounge. I really appreciate this lounge as Alexandra. The catering was outside with big table. Sorry, no problem to find a seat. So the diversity of also other spaces, as there was an XR church on the first floor for all the artistic and demonstration and exhibitions. So that was a very good moment for me, and of course meeting a lot of new faces and old friends.
Yeah, great. Maybe I can also share. I mean, the event for me, one of the defining characteristics of this event historically is that I think it's quite interdisciplinary. I would even say eclectic. The type of speakers and stakeholders who attend, and I think that was retained as a characteristic this year, even with it being at a smaller scale. It still felt very, very diverse. And it was an interesting mix of people. There were a lot of people that I have seen in previous events, particularly among some of the prominent speakers. But then the Virtual Worlds Association is just one very prominent example of new speakers, of new personalities who were present, who might not have been as present in previous years before the establishment of this new association. But of course, the heat, the heat was a factor. And I remember the week before I was in Portugal on a bit of holiday before coming to the event, and was thinking it was going to be hotter there, and then seeing the news reports and the warnings from Eurostar about the intense heat. So it was something that I think everybody was surprised by. Certainly the organizers were very surprised. It's a bit unfortunate timing. And it was highlighted by that venue. It's a new venue. The location's, I don't know, I'm curious what people think about the location. I actually kind of like the location on the water. It wasn't, it's a new part of the city for me. But as Thierry mentioned, it had an upstairs for the Church of VR where they did the exhibition. It had several prominent, like 2 main rooms for content, and then this third room where they had the lounge, which unfortunately I didn't get a chance to spend much time in the lounge. But I think people were generally quite pleased with the layout of the venue. But is that maybe, Alex, can you speak more on what we were just talking about?
I think it's a great location for a summer event right by the river. I mean, if it hadn't been 30 plus degrees, I think it would have been like a really, really nice spot. Unfortunately, the place was not air conditioned, so I think it made things harder for everyone inside, or not enough air conditioned maybe. But it's a nice area. It's a bit far from the station. You have to take a cab, or it's a long walking distance. But it's a nice up and coming area. I think Laetitia, you were muted, but you wanted to add something.
I did the Dutch flavor because I bike to the location, which was easy. But biking with the heat was another story.
What I really liked was the layout is really great, because you have this huge former warehouse that can be separated into different rooms, and I like that little room for the booth and for more technical proposals and the hardware. And then it was quite soundproof, I must say. The sound and everything was quite good, because you had these 2 adjacent rooms with speakers and panels, and it was very easy to go from one to the other. It wasn't very well attended, I must say. We were lucky with Impulse, because on that morning, as you were saying, Michael, the heat wave hadn't yet hit. So it was still okay on the Tuesday morning, and we were lucky for the pitches, industry side and content side. And then on the first floor were the Church of VR, which is their historical, I would say, creative content showcase. The Wi-Fi wasn't great, and the heat was really too much, even for some of the, for some of the producers or mediators who were there. Plus, some people didn't even want to put on headsets. That's what I heard, because of the heat. Some people really didn't want to have anything to do with a headset. It's a bit of a disappointment but I would really suggest that the Ketun House, which is the venue, make an effort if they want to welcome more creative and cultural industries, players and events, because it is gonna need either heat during the winter, because it's freezing cold, for having been there a couple of times, and in the summer it gets too hot. So there is an issue with the venue, but there wasn't an issue with the people there. I would say it even perhaps helped the conversation and bringing people together outside, sitting at the tables and everything and chatting. So it was a great gathering. in terms of content in the panels and speakers, I didn't go to all of them, so I cannot say, but it's true that you had the usual suspects that we've seen 10 years ago. So back in Amsterdam and during the first years of Immersive Tech Week. So Ben has created a very steady followers group in a sense. He has his followers and his believers. His cheerleaders, and we're among them somehow. So yeah.
I mean, I think for those who weren't there, that is something maybe to consider for next year, is just knowing that the venue, depending on the time of year, needs some additional investment. I think it's fair from the
city,
the authorities from the city that is putting that as the central location and hub for immersive arts in the region. And of course, it's incredible to have such a hub. And the venue itself, I think, again, generally speaking, I think is a good event venue. But yeah, definitely needs some investment on climate control, I think, going forward. Unless it's going to be spring and fall. Spring and fall, I'm sure it's going to be
perfect.
Fun. But coming back to the content track, because there were these two rooms. And so for people who, again, were not there, you had a room that was kind of the main venue, is where things kicked off and where they closed. The Impulse program, which is something that XR for Europe was producing, which is supporting creative content projects and entrepreneurial projects to pitch and to have meetings. That took place in that main venue, but there was this track room, which was running concurrently that whole time as well. I myself couldn't attend any of the discussions because I was doing the Impulse, and I'm also the kind of person who likes to sit out and just have people come up and say hi and talk about what they're doing. So I didn't see what stood out in terms of content. What was some of the talks or maybe the messages that came out, because there were some familiar faces on stage, but then there were others who were on stage who I don't think have really been on stage there before.
I can begin. I had to make a choice, of course, because on parallel sessions and so on. And on the very first day, at the very first presentation, there was two successive, one keynote and one panel about scaling across Europe. And I found it extremely interesting because we had the keynote from Jeremy Dalton on I would say global point of view, B2B market level, and the panel that were more on is ground level in English, not too pejorative about that, having different perspective from people working on also very different institution, because we had Mathieu Worm, from the president of Virtual World Association, but also Mandy from, so it's Mandy Marco from Niedersachs Public Institution, Hater from Pico, and the last one was David Cartwright from UV-San, that's UV disinfection company for headsets. And they all gave them their point of view, which what's interesting that they all came to the same conclusion, which is if you want to scale XR in Europe, the problem is not the technical. It's not a technical problem. It's a user experience problem. So it means you have to take care of, for example, what Dave said about as it for taking care of hygiene. So taking care of how you put a headset and how people are working. So it's not only user experience within the module, it's the user experience globally, what's happening when somebody proposes you to have a demo with a headset. So that's quite important on this point of view. Mathieu had a very interesting thought about the problem of the more than 1,300 standards existing for the industry-led, and so that explained also how it's difficult to deploy. So this both keynote and panel afterwards gave me a real good experience of this conference, because that was my first step and to it. I'd never been to Immersive Tech Week before, so I was quite a new guy on this.
Wow, okay.
Wow.
And then, as I told before, how it was organized for me was very easy to find my way and find interesting places. So I will come back to two other places where I had very interesting experience, in the lounge and in the Church of VR.
Okay.
That's yeah. Go ahead, Laetitia.
To expand on the scalability, there was Floris Smith from Upscale XR. And to follow up on what you said, he was saying that storytelling and operational design and technology need to go hand in hand for the scalability, and what they're doing is up to 80 people. So I thought that was quite interesting, because there weren't many Dutch startups or representatives present, not as much as I would, expect from a local event. It was fairly international, which is also good because it brings international people to Rotterdam. But Floris was one of the startups, and also he's operational in ITW, I think, Immersive Tech Week. I think he's running the Church of VR with his Upscale XR technology.
Oh, there was a Dutch. So one of our members is a Dutch SME that was in the exhibition hall as Changified. So there were definitely some, but yeah, I would say it was a very international exhibition hall. Even we had also Cloud Atlas, another one of our members from Eastern Europe, who was there presenting their fall computing. So it was an interesting mix, perhaps even a little bit more diverse than when it in the past has been a little larger, but has been much more local. There was a bit of a different diversity there. Yeah, Alex?
No, I was gonna say the same. There were several Dutch exhibitors, but also others, Ukraine, UK. There were a few. It was well represented.
Yeah, about the content, just because of the one example, Thierry, that you were presenting, I think the topic of scaling across Europe, it's interesting that it was presented, because it is this talking point, this recognized need, but definitely hard to address, because you mentioned like the people on that panel, of course, come with it very differently, like from very, very different perspectives. And I think even reflected in maybe what they thought were the bottlenecks, which are the bottlenecks that their company or their institution is maybe most keenly focused on. I remember sitting in the outdoor in the patio area near the water, and talking about basically the cleaning of headsets, and how in the post-pandemic era it really has kind of fallen by the wayside. And in ITW and other events, Stereopsia in the past as well, there were I think a lot of this pressure in those years to have visible cleaning on site, because you were using headsets. Different people were doing the demoing, but it didn't seem to stick. People felt I remember people that I worked with in Istanbul at that time, who would say, no one will ever wear a headset in public ever again. It seemed a bit extreme at the time, but it wasn't, that wasn't a completely out there proposition. It's interesting how, that didn't resonate. And so to see a company suggesting that the cleanliness of headsets and the visibility of the cleaning protocol for headsets is a bottleneck for scalability is, again, it's a curious one, because it wouldn't be intuitive for me. So I regret that I missed that talk to see a little bit more how they substantiated that. And for the standards that you mentioned, if anyone's interested, I think that there's a standards registry maintained by the Virtual Dimension Center, the VDC. So if you go to their website, they have this, that's probably what Matthew Barham was referring to, is this really long list of standards. And when you look at it, when you go click on a standard, you realize you can't see or access the standard without paying. And so it's actually, when I went to the registry the first time, I understood, oh, there's a business model. I make a standard and then I try to sell it to people. So it helps to explain a little bit why there are so many standards, because there's a business model behind it that maybe lay people like myself are not aware of.
And there are not enough venues able to adapt to the scalability that is now needed. This is why you have so many, for instance, in China or in the UK and the US and Canada, you have way more venues that are just playgrounds for installing these standards. And I think here we still have older buildings. We've seen it. It's a perfect example. Actually, speaking of scalability, in the Ketun House is kind of ironic because it couldn't possibly offer that proposal, whereas it should, in a way, in a few years at least, it should be able to have a very big, scalable, adjusted, flexible room with enough Wi-Fi and power to accommodate a big number of people, because that's where we're going. We're going more and more in BVR. So if you don't have that scalability and that standards oriented room scale, then you're gonna lag behind. I have the impression. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, maybe for that second floor, I think the example you're referring to is really much more like an exhibition. And it's true. I mean, I think that venue wouldn't, as it's currently resourced, and the infrastructure in it wouldn't really support a large scale exhibition as of yet. Alex?
Yeah, talking about cleaning, I discovered in the Church of VR a new, I don't know if it's new or if it's just me not knowing them, but a new, like a cabinet sterilizer for VR headsets. And it's a European brand compared to the well-known American one. So I was happy to see them. It was one of the Dutch creators that had this sterilizer cabinet, and I was very pleased. I don't know if we are mentioning names or not here, but
if you know it,
go.
Uvisan.
Uvisan.
I don't know how new they are. They may not be, but we are seeing Cleanbox everywhere, and it's really nice to see that we have a European brand as well. So I'm trying to push it out there, European sovereignty and all.
Nice.
And actually, David Cartwright at the panel was from Uvisan. He was testimony.
Okay. Well.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, so that's just an indication that with the familiar faces, there were new faces that were obviously very, very satisfying to see. So just conscious of time, we have a few comments, but we don't have any specific questions. So the comments are just sharing their thoughts on the venue and expressing interest to hear what our thoughts were of the event. So maybe just to kind of bring us to a close in the absence of audience questions, I guess what are you maybe expecting for the second half of the? Oh, sorry, Thierry, go ahead.
Before I just one last point about Jeremy Dalton keynote. Something that strikes me, because he is proposing an online database called XRHQ so it's a database of B2B XR deployments with ROI and information. So I think any initiative that tends to make catalogs, and we are able to see a summary of a lot of different experiences is interesting. And of course, we have to be able to harvest this. I will speak a little bit more about that later on other topics. But another initiative of a use cases database. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that is a good one, because people can go visit that now. It's XRHQ, I think, right? That's the website. It's out there. He's become definitely more active on LinkedIn of late, sharing some of the new articles or case studies there. It's something that we've also put into our newsletter. We had a link for early adopters for it, so we are definitely supporting these efforts. It's tough. I would say, if I'm going to be honest about it, a lot of that wanting to capture ROI, it's the reason we still trying to capture it is because a lot of that ROI data is not available to be scraped by the internet. It's proprietary, it's internal, and so we're supportive, because if Jeremy can crack this challenge and find the solution for it, it would be a tremendous resource for many people. There actually is also a repository of use cases, industrial use cases and enterprise use cases, also operated by the Virtual Dimension Center that I mentioned before, the VDC. They also have such a link, probably with a more local focus, but that being the counter, that when it's more local, these are people who you have greater access to. Maybe there's a little bit more depth to what they're able to report and what you're able to share. But then you are, inherently limited by what type of use cases are in your immediate region. So we definitely need it. I mean, people are always asking for this. Yeah, Laetitia?
Yes, I wanted to highlight also the presence of people from New Zealand, from New York, from Norway, the delegation, and I thought that was a very good, that it had potential for matchmaking, but this year the matchmaking wasn't curated as it used to be. It was more informal and based on proactive app meetings. And so perhaps some people didn't understand that it was requiring a little bit more of a personal dynamic than before, where everything was set up for them. And so there has been criticism on that side. But I wanted to say that really the level and the quality of the projects and pitches during the Impulse program were quite high, and I was very pleased with the choices made there and the people who showed up for it.
Yeah, and so just to clarify, the matchmaking you're referring to was within the Impulse program.
Exactly.
It wasn't, not necessarily.
Yes.
The event itself doesn't do the curated matchmaking.
Exactly.
But within the Impulse program, in past editions, that was a feature of it. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, speaking again about the Impulse program that we produced, for sure there were, there were some challenges to organize it this year at an event that was in a new venue, a new time of year, and was having to adapt to a lot of constraints that they themselves were realizing as they got closer to the event. But that was one. All right, so we see several more chats. Okay, there we do have a question. We have a question from Miguel, and I'll put it up here. So thank you very much, Miguel. So do you feel, everyone, there was a deliberate focus on the artistic side of immersion, and could this be the way forward for ITW? So that's a fair question. I think they're often, every event has like a label attached to it. It's an industry event, it's a artistic or cultural, and some of these labels, they come from, they're not what the event identifies themselves as, but it is something that sometimes is cultivated by attendees. So yeah, what do you guys think?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say it's always been there. The Church of VR is, like I was saying, part of the historical, program, but it perhaps was more oriented toward the artistic side because of the pitching sessions during the Impulse, and also the panels and discussions. They were highlights of some artistic developments. If I think of the lady, of certain people who were speakers, it's true. Even the scalability aspect is mostly, when we speak of it, for entertainment purposes. So perhaps it could be, although there was the hardware and the industry
Healthcare.
Healthcare is always there, exactly. Manufacturing and so on. So I think it's been both, but perhaps Ben is steering more into the entertainment part of it. Perhaps that's his. I don't know. Yeah. But it's fair.
Yeah.
It's fair to ask.
Yeah. Alex, did you have a thought on this question?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think it's a question for Ben.
Yeah.
I feel like there was a little bit more content, conferences about creation, but there were still a bit of everything else. Everything was smaller scale. So, of course, he had a little bit less of healthcare than he usually did, a little bit less of industry as he usually did. And maybe it was I don't know, easier, or like it was a way to show more creative projects and talks. Did he do it on purpose? I'm not sure. And is he steering in that direction? I'm not sure either. I think it was still a good mix. There was still a good mix on both industry as an Impulse, entrepreneurship and creators. Both have always been in a balance at ITW, I think.
And so again, with a newbie eye, and, you are all familiar with Laval Virtual and the Recto Verso side exhibition, and I was always frustrated because Recto Verso was not on the same location. You had to go in Laval to see, and I found very refreshing that you can have artistic XR experience just by climbing stairs after a session, or your mind has been a little bit hotter, and it was the case. And so having the possibility to go and wander around Church of VR, I really found it very interesting. Again, refreshing is the term for this.
My answer to that question about whether if it was a deliberate focus on the artistic side, and whether it could be the way forward for it, I think, to maybe echo Thierry and Alex as well, I wouldn't say it's very artistic. There were definitely artistic projects, but there were creative projects, and maybe I should highlight, very prominently presenting there was another one of our members, the CIIIC, which is funding, creative innovation. So they're not looking at purely artistic works; they're looking at innovation, and really driving new tools, new projects, new platforms. Anything that's going to be commercially impactful and viable and grow that space. So I would say that definitely the creative side was very prominent. Even for the entrepreneurs that we had in Impulse, many of them, they were exploring business models that were in IP, building out immersive projects for intellectual property, and of course healthcare. But the creativity in healthcare, I was interested. One of the panels, I didn't get to attend it, but one of our Impulse presenters, she had a project in the creative track. Her name is Bina Lee, who came from New York. She spoke on a panel with, I believe it was Alina Goldwoman, one of our decision makers, who's a designer, and of course also Skip Rizzo, a very well-known academic and researcher. And they had, I saw them later, talking for a very long. They had a lot to talk about because the creativity and the design aspects are never out of any equation, whether it's research or industry and enterprise. There's always a design element, a creative element to it. So I think that probably the feeling, because it's the common thread of everything is some type of design and creation, no matter what it was people were doing it. So it gives it that feel. But I think the presence of the CIIIC and again particularly the VWA this year, they're important. That they need, you can't have a purely creative side healthy without the enterprise, the industry, and the research. It really is mixing them. So I would hope going forward that the event doesn't decide to explicitly go into the artistic or the creative side, because it brings up very different expectations. Now you're competing with like markets, media, film market festivals and stuff like that. You're starting to change it a little bit. So
it's their DNA. It's the DNA of ITW to have the academic, the industry, and the creative aspects. So it's always been that way.
Yeah. So what I understood going forward, and this year was a test case for this, was moving away from the industry fair type of centrality of the industry fair. Maybe for those who weren't there and had seen past events, that might have been different. And if you go next year, that you maybe would expect it really much more focused on the talks, the opportunity, like the lounges. I think the lounges, just what I'm hearing, were very successful. So I would expect to see more of that type of programming next edition. So really more of this human connection part versus the pitching in an industry fair.
Yeah, it's true. It's that's a good point. It was like I was saying before, it's a playground, the Keaton House, and he used it as a playground for his own program this year, so that we wouldn't be restricted to an agenda, but we could free flow somehow, and it worked. For some, it seemed a bit discomforting, and for others, it was serendipitous. So it covers both aspects. It can be frustrating not to have a lineup of meetings, but on the other hand, it was very nice to sit outside and to have chats. And also, many people came with their prototypes. Here I'm going back to the creative aspect, or not, because you had also people with their prototypes for industry. Solutions, but it was really perhaps more like what I've seen before in 2016-17 in Crans-Montana at the World XR Forum. And that was a while ago, but it goes back to the days where it was a bit of a sandbox. Although we already had the academic, the industrial, and the creative sides, all of them represented. And perhaps what can be done, what I would suggest is to have a Dutch corner or something really fairly Dutch. Because I'm seeing what Friederike shared with everybody. Thank you for that. And it's quite impressive, the list of Dutch XR representatives, and that could be something, because if you go to Rotterdam, then you want to also meet the Dutch network and ecosystem.
For sure. Yeah.
Is that okay if I cite some of my favorite in the church?
We're all about naming names, naming projects.
So friends, I met them for the first time at this time, but I was so amazed by two present. There was a presentation and the demonstration of Melody Mousset, and she did something called Empathy Creatures. So a little birdie, very nice, very poor creature that is totally responding to your voice and your moves, and so it was absolutely moving, very, very moving. And the other one from Cinzia Fossati, called Symphony of the Deep. I haven't.
That's a prototype. That's a prototype.
It's a prototype, indeed, in the impulse area. That's right. I never have been so moved by an XR experience, swimming as a baby whale with whales and sending your sounds are lightening the cover. And so that was absolutely fantastic. I will remember for a very long time and probably forever.
Thank you, Thierry. I have 2 comments on that.
Oh yes, please. I could say that, no problem. It was not.
Yes,
a secret.
yes. No.
Okay.
It's very nice. First, I'm producing Symphony of the Deep, so thank you for sharing that.
I didn't know.
No, exactly. You didn't know. And second, I must also highlight that Melody Mousset's Empathy Creature incorporates one of our former impulse industry startup or spin-off called Virtual Being. The little bird is actually
swear it wasn't prepared.
No, but Thierry, I'm saying
and let's speak about the last thing then. Probably you are not involved into it, Laetitia. It was in the lounge. It was a project called Oasis. And I was indeed very interesting by this project because I visited on the Monday morning School of Arts, Rotterdam School of Arts, which is part of the 6 schools that are working on this Oasis project. And so I was very interesting because the pitch was Oasis building the future immersive workforce together. So it was a demo of integrated platform for the teachers and students with a lot of collaborating tool and a virtual world with a very, very nice user experience, I must tell. But as a platform, it's too integrated. So they wanted our advice, our feedback, and I gave mine, which was they asked us to share your ideas, discover how you can become part of the project and the ecosystem. But this is a too much integrated platform. They don't take into account sharing means, for example, having a federation authentication server to break the platform into modules so you can use them from different other platforms like the LMS, the Learning Managing System. That's called the Moodle plugin because I'm a Moodle fan. And so my advice for them, if you really want to share, don't do something which is a block because and there are licensing problems as well with some tools. So it's all Dutch government funded, but I don't see any sharing and sustainability potential if they don't look at the development and they don't work on the development for the very beginning to share, not to have something which fits their own needs as an integrated platform. So that was my last feedback. Not my last, because I went to ITW also to make a pitch, isn't it, Alexandra?
Absolutely. The VR World Association.
We were in the Virtual World Association lounge, and I did a pitch on the Virtual World Academy of Skills, but no more advertisement. You will know about Vivas a lot in the next months and years.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, great. I mean, I think just conscious of time, because it was 3 days. And some of us were there for, 2 days or 3, but there was definitely there's a lot to talk about, but I think that gives a pretty accurate flavor of what the experience was like if you had been there and what to maybe expect next year. And so definitely anyone.
Michael, I would suggest everybody to do, if possible, like Cinzia and Ellen from Norway and others who came with their prototypes. Because then you have Thierry walking around and finding one interesting content. And so it is also you know, this type of event, since it's not too strict on who, because at other events, you probably couldn't do it on the ground. You would need to do it perhaps aside or on the sly. Whereas here you can bring your prototype and nobody will, you know,
That's a good point. That's an interesting point, because I can think of a couple industry events where maybe they would prefer that you had bought an exhibition spot. Maybe I don't you know, I've never tested.
I don't know how you see that, Alex.
I mean, I get the sense that if you have a VR project or an AR project or something, of course you bring your demo. Of course you do, like to every event, you know, because you know, because that's the whole point, right? I mean, of course, an event wants to create a good experience for exhibition, and so they have resources to set up for that. But at the end of the day, they want people talking about what they saw. So you can definitely do that at Immersive Tech Week. I would hope you can do it at every event in the industry.
I think so.
If there are any, if there are any that you can't, and you're listening, think about opening it up. You know, because I think people should be able to show what they've made. I mean, because you have a world in a very small piece of equipment. I mean, you have an entire world in it, whether it's an AR glass and or it's a virtual or mixed reality headset or something. You have a world in a very small device. So I think you should be open for people bringing it.
I think it's a no-brainer.
Okay.
I mean, people can bring their iPad, their headsets. I mean, if you want to enjoy full visibility with attracting people, then you take a booth. If you don't have the means for the booth and you want to travel around, well, bring your laptop, iPad, or your headset. I mean, it's a no-brainer.
It's fair. It's true. And also, what I would suggest to the ITW producers and the head. To Ben,
powers that be.
It would be actually to perhaps connect us with something happening in Rotterdam. Because as you were saying, Thierry, you visited a school, but I would have been interested in visiting some types or some different, either venues or people or whatever. And that can be broadened to the city.
The digital twins of Rotterdam, as they present.
Exactly. For instance, so I lacked a bit the Dutchness. That's what I said at the beginning, and I'm consistent with it. Yes, with with doing something where you bring the people who have come and traveled all this way to something to showcase some aspects that could enrich our understanding of what's going on.
Mm-hmm. That's always right. That's a luxury of when you choose your location for your event. We co-organized an event in Munich a couple of years ago, and part of that was explicitly to have this kind of guided tour around the different local companies to see their work, their labs, their studios, their production spaces and stuff. And so it's always a luxury, but it's an extra day of content. So I think that's the challenge of it. But of course, if you can do it, there's usually an audience for that, particularly if they're taking the time to come from a significant distance.
That's what I mean.
It is appealing. Yeah, that's worth it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a suggestion because Rotterdam has many things to offer. That's it. But for me, as the Impulse co-initiator, I'm pleased at the quality of the pitches and the people who responded, the project holders who responded, and I just felt very sorry for the heat strike.
Yeah. People made the most. If anything, it's sometimes it's nice that everyone has a shared experience, because again, there's different content. I didn't hear the content you hear, so now we have a different experience. We didn't see the same work, but we all had the shared experience, which was trying to find a cool place to hang out for a bit and talk and meet with people. So sometimes it has there's a silver lining. these external forces and external factors that event has to persevere through.
We should take notice of what Frederic just mentioned, and that's true. SHINE is the organization representing the ecosystem, and
definitely check the comments if you're watching this. If you're on LinkedIn, if you're on YouTube, go to the LinkedIn to see the comments, because we're simultaneously on different platforms, and the comments aren't in the same place everywhere. But yes, so SHINE is that organization helping to represent that region.
And it's true that it's been what I felt was also the first. Everybody I would run into was a bit demotivated. There was this impression of lack of funding, lack of initiative taking from the public organizations and institutions. You know, there was a bit of this, you know, that was a feeling that was shared. I wasn't the only one to feel that.
I hear it. Yeah. I don't feel it, and I don't hear it very often. But there is a subset of the general population, and I think very much in international events that are very that have a strong American. Because it sounds like the U.S. is a very rough place to be right now if you are in the immersive space. So thankfully, we're all in Europe. But
but still, it depends on which country you're in. And for instance, there was the mention of no more associations, no more on stage, and I was like, well, you know, we need to defend our ground, and we still need this the federation of this ecosystem that hasn't yet fully emerged. It is there, and there are many public endeavors to support it, but it's not equal across countries.
That's true.
We know that, and I certainly know that.
I think we're not talking to the same people. I mean, I constantly hear, "Oh my God, we're so lucky with the CIIIC, with the millions they have been granted by the government." Well, we're talking about Europe here. I'm sorry about Switzerland. Sorry, but I mean, France with France 2030. Yeah. I mean, there are so many great initiatives, and let's not even mention the EU projects and the Horizon and the Creative and the next Agoria. So I really think it really depends who you're talking to and how involved they are in these kind of projects, because there is money and there is investment. Of course, the Europeans rely more on subsidies than the Americans do, but I mean, the ecosystem is there, and I think there's really something going on, and so there's a way to,
Yes, but we cover Europe as a whole. We don't cover only member countries at XR for Europe. And this is why we should not forget that the European Union has done a lot, but some other countries are not in the mix. Also, on the creative side, many fundings there is more funding now going into the industry, because there is also more funding for the military and in general for defense. And so the creative has been hurt in many European member states.
I mean, we all have to adapt to local challenges and dynamics, as well as the global ones. I mean, Europe and then the global ones. So I think every country has every region within a country has its difference. We support a project, We Are Health Champions, which has a new report. Actually, if I could talk about there's a new report about the landscape for VR adoption and payability, looking at the payment systems for 8 different countries. So that's available on the website for VR Health Champions. And it's just to say that, for example, when we did a project like that project only supports entities initially through this cascade funding, only in SMEs in less developed regions of Europe. So, for example, it reveals, Hungary, most of Hungary is designated that, but not Budapest. Czech Republic, but not Prague. So it's like you realize, of course, even within a country, there are many different dynamics and regionalities that people have to deal with. I would say that, again, I generally hear a fair bit of just casual optimism about their people's businesses, projects that they're doing, not just the public funded, but the commercial industry projects and creative projects. People have to adapt to changing opportunities, but the general sense that I hear is, there are more opportunities here than there have been in the past, and but that doesn't invalidate anyone's specific challenges that they have in their context. But anyway, an ITW is a great example of a place when you bring so many diverse stakeholders and profiles into the same place. You hear all these different challenges, and sometimes it resonates with your challenge, even if the dynamic is different, the explanation is different. But generally, I got the sense that people were definitely several from the U.S. They're coming to Europe because they feel like they're hearing opportunities to do projects that they would love to do, but the U.S. is not a place to do those types of projects, and Europe seems to be maybe more of a place to do that.
Yes, and what is nice about all this, in a sense, because if some people now feel there is a lack of funding, or not lack, but a decrease of funding, it's also because there are more actors coming up. So the same pot for many more people, which means that XR is picking up. So in a sense, it's also very positive. And if you see it, the glass half full, then you think, okay, we have more XR creators, we have more XR startups, and there is still a very dynamic input in general in Europe, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, maybe just to close on that point, there's been a lot of effort to democratize access to these technologies and to the things that you can make with it, and that just necessarily means there's more competition. Yeah. So you hope that the opportunity grows at the same rate or faster than the competition, but sometimes the competition grows more quickly than the opportunity, but there's still growth. But maybe on that point, that sounds like there's more to discuss outside of the ITW context. That was just a great opportunity to highlight. Yeah, but that's nice because
it's from there,
And ITW was XR for Europe's selected summer event, the event of the summer that we wanted to highlight, because the calendar is now going to get a little light as the weather picks up, the heat picks up, and probably I would say we have a few more events coming up. We have, of course, Gamescom. We have other events that are all important and on the calendar. We have Venice, maybe, though, is traditionally when the second half of the year starts. So this was a great event to kind of cap off the first half of the year, give us some stuff to think about when some people are on holiday, some people are working full-time through the summer, and then we start the second half of the year, leading up, of course, to the big end-of-year event as United XR. So that's, when I look at the calendar, it's always in like these semesters. But anyway, let's thank you very much for all three of you for sharing your insights and your experiences at the event. Thank you for everybody who was watching us live and sharing their comments. And again, continue to share your comments, because there's probably a lot of people who have something to add about what they thought stood out. And look for us next time.
Had a comment as well that is quite interesting, that it's very broad, and Immersive Tech Week tries to give samples of this broad role we're all in, and that's a good point. Thank you, Miguel.
Yeah.
And my conclusion is I will go back to Immersive Tech Week.
Yes, that was the final question, is that, are you guys going back next year? Is it on your calendar for next year? Yeah. Thierry says yes. Alex, Laetitia, will we expect to see you next year?
We've been, I checked the other day, I thought I had been only since 2019, but actually it was 2018. And that's where I first met Alexandra.
Yes. What are the dates for 2027? Do we already know?
No,
I do not know. So just keep that half of the year open in your calendar. Don't plan anything for those 4 or 5 months.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
But Impulse will be back. That's for sure. Yes.
All right, everybody, and we'll be back to recap another event when we have a lot of us attending. So make sure that everyone knows what they're missing and what they shouldn't miss next year at all these different events around the year.
Exactly.
So, all right, everybody, take care.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye for those online. Thanks.